This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, I'm calling us to order at 9:07 Eastern. I am sending the agenda out to the list right now. And Mr. Secretary, if you could take the roll while I am doing that.
Yes, and after you're done doing that, I need to be able to share.
I'll enable that right now.
Okay. So I don't see California. I'll just call the names I don't see. Josh Chapel, New Mexico. Toby Clark.
Can everybody else mute, please?
Yeah, that was Star Child. Sean Dempsey. Not seeing. Tim McMaster from Pennsylvania, not seeing. Justin Nana. Ashley Shade, Mary Swim. Those are the names I don't see. Everybody else I do. So that gives us 11 primaries. Of the alternates, I see Clayton Cachado. Is he here?
He's here.
Yep. And I thought I saw Star Child.
He's here.
Oh, I see him. There he is. Yep. Okay. There's no other alternates present. And the second alternate, there's no second alternates present in the room. I'm observing. So that gives us, if Star Child is acting, 12 votes. Yeah. And then let me share the screen so everybody can see the roll call.
And it's getting emailed right now. Apologies for that, because I did prepare that first thing this morning.
All right. This way everybody can see the roll. If all the names look correct. I'll just put an X. So we have 12 members here that can vote, Madam Chair.
Okay, it's now opportunity for public comment. This would also include things that aren't necessarily on our agenda for comment from committee members. I think we only have one. Well, I don't see him. I thought Mr. Thrain would be here. I saw him on the guest list. I'm so used to him being here. So if any committee members have anything that really doesn't fit in the agenda, but would like to address the rest of the committee here.
Did you just send the agenda, Madam Chair?
Yes, Star Child, and apologies for not doing that earlier. I thought I did.
I see Sean Hickman is present, so he will sit for Washington. That gives us 13.
Okay, seeing none. Mr. Secretary, you should be able, let me know if you're sharing, because you know how my screen is. I gotta sometimes.
I am, and I need to I'm gonna get the agenda on screen in just a moment.
Yeah. I sometimes have to scold Zoom to show me your screen, which I just did. Now I can see it.
I gotta add Mr. Hickman to the thing here.
Can you please?
What was that?
Can you please mute, or somebody who's not muted? There's all kinds of background noise. All right. As is our custom, and plus they're not ready yet. Mr. Secretary has let me know the status of the minutes. As you can imagine, with these frequent meetings, it's very easy for the minutes to get away from you. When they are prepared, they will be dealt with on the email list. Item C on the agenda. This is going to be, I'm going to just make the motion so that we can have discussion. I move that we include in our survey, in the last section, the Brayman and Star Child proposals on self-ownership if they are not yet considered by the end of this meeting. Would anyone like, and let me speak to that. They've been properly put before the committee. I would like to get member feedback on them because they could be astoundingly popular, and putting it at the very end then doesn't prejudice the proposals that the committee has already passed, because people who lose patience, excuse me, with the survey will quit before the end. The danger is that we annoy members. There will be comments, as there always is, no matter how short or long the survey is, about halfway through saying, how long is this bleep, bleep, bleep thing going to be? You'll see
Madam
it, you'll
Chair.
laugh. Mr. Taylor.
Madam Chair.
Oh, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't mean to be rude. Can Star Child mute?
Sure. I don't think there's noise particular here, but
It's
Yeah,
part
there,
two.
there is. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Just going to comment that I'm reluctant to put these two proposals in because we have not approved them, and they are kind of dealing with the margins, I guess, getting towards the end of the proposals where we are. I feel like one of them is rehashing some of the material that we've seen before many times. I spent a meeting and a half on earlier this year. If they're put at the very, very end of the report, I wouldn't object to that, but I don't necessarily think that it's necessary to include them, considering the fact that the survey is already going to be very, very long. That's just my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I kept waiting for you to say my favorite expression. I won't cry if it's passed, but Mr. Seebeck.
Move to postpone to time certain of 8:50 p.m.
Okay, we have a motion to postpone this until 8:50 Mountain, so that would be 10:50 Eastern.
Yes.
Is there any, would you like to speak to that, Mike, or do you want to just get right
Yeah,
to
real simple. We don't know what we're going to cover yet, so let's address this once we get closer to the end of the meeting and then see where we're at.
Thank you. Is there any objection to postponing this until 10:50 Eastern?
I object.
Okay. Mr. Seebeck, do you wish this to go to a vote?
Well, if there's an objection, we kind of have to, right?
Or you could withdraw it if you wished. I'm not asking you to,
No,
I'm just,
Not withdrawing it.
okay, thank you. Would anyone like to speak to this?
I would.
Yes.
Star Child?
I think Mark was actually first, but either way.
You'll both get to speak, so please go.
Okay. Yeah, I think the way that you worded the motion, Madam Chair, it is worded so that it wouldn't really matter whether we address it now or later, because you said only if we don't get to the items. If we do get to the items, then the motion would be moot automatically. So I don't really see what's gained by postponing it.
Thank you, Star Child. Mr. Brayman.
Yes, just that I feel this was perhaps the single most important item that I wanted to discuss when I joined this committee, and I feel it's very important that that the body as a whole get a chance to weigh in on whether they want this. The other items that have touched on the government response to the pandemic have only touched on it in the very slightest of ways. For example, where we refer to pandemic as well as in a list of other kinds of emergencies. I think this is a timely topic and will get the attention of a lot of people who are very interested in it.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Mr. McHose, to answer your question in chat, if you are able to get to your email, both proposals are on the agenda, worded in full at the end of the agenda.
The end of the agenda?
Yes.
Okay, I'll look at that then. I got that. I just didn't
It's
know where it was.
items F and G. Okay, seeing no further discussion and there is objection, Mr. Secretary, if you could do a roll call vote, please.
State the question again, Madam Chair, please.
Certainly, I'm going to have to remember it because I was bad. I forget what it's like to be a secretary and have people just state things. It is moved that the committee directs the chair to include the proposals by Mr. Brayman and
Point of
Star Child.
order.
It's a motion to
I did not
postpone.
withdraw my motion.
Oh, duh. Motion to, you're correct. Sorry. It's a motion to postpone till 10:50 Eastern.
That was not withdrawn. Okay.
That was not withdrawn, no.
Okay. Well, then let's do that one then. All right. Mark Raymond,
No.
Ted Brown,
I'll pass at this point.
Joe Brunhart,
Yes.
Sean Hickman, Sean Hickman, Washington.
Sorry, I found the mute button. Abstain.
Okay. Sean Dempsey. Nope. Dempsey's not here. Sorry. Ken Matz.
No.
Okay. Master's not here. Josh McHose.
Aye.
Omar Curl will vote aye. Mike Seebeck.
Aye.
Darchild.
Nay.
Curry Taylor.
Aye.
John Thompson.
Abstain.
Okay. Coming back to Mr. Brown.
And Mr.
Ah.
Cholko noted he's not on the list.
I am missing that. Let me add him here. Yeah. Mr. Brown, how did you wish to vote?
Oh, I'll vote aye.
Okay. And Ms. Choco.
No.
Okay. I'll get that sorted out. All right, Madam Chair, I'm showing here if I missed anyone.
We missed Sean Hickman. He abstained.
Yep, now it makes sense. 12 votes. 6 in favor, 4 opposed, 2 express abstentions.
Okay, that passes. We'll be moving on to the next item, which is, and you'll need to get the agenda up probably, Mr. Secretary, because you're going to have to put multiple proposals up on the screen.
Yeah,
And
I have them. The problem is getting all 3 of them on the screen at the same time, but I can get 2 of them on the screen, but I have them ready to go. Hold on.
well, I did do a suggestion on the list on how to handle this, but we have multiple proposals on 3.4. One of them is simply to move the entire plank up to section 1. Another one is simply to strike the word unreasonably before constrained when talking about immigration. The third one is to split it into 2 planks, dividing out economic freedom from freedom of movement. They are not mutually exclusive, but we do, I think, need to make some decisions, particularly on moving the language. So what I had suggested on the email list was, and this would be a certain logical ordering that we would have to do regardless of votes or what the survey says. But I think logically, we need to handle the big one first, which is splitting it between the 2 concepts of freedom of movement and economic freedom. The chair's personal opinion is, and the committee does not have to agree, is if that fails, we're probably not going to succeed in moving the migration one up to section 1 because it has economics in there and it might seem kind of weird. And then the third decision is, do we want to just throw in striking out unreasonably and right from the start? Or do we think that one change may cause certain people not to vote for dividing the 2? And we can consider dividing the 2 so important that we would like that to have the best chance of passing, and then go for striking unreasonably separately. Again, the chair's personal opinion on that is that's the best move. That word unreasonably, striking that, for some reason does cause a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth in the party. And if we do think separating out these two is really important, my recommendation is that we separate them, then go to striking unreasonably, and whether or not that passes or not, moving migration up to 1. To me, that's the logical order. I don't want to get in a habit of making a ton of motions. So those are my suggestions. I would be interested in motions from the committee on how to handle this. Mr. Brayman.
I would move to start by the question of dividing the two topics.
Okay, so that would be PCG. So, right? Yes, so that would be PCG. And so no matter what other factors go into ranking our proposals, it is your proposal to handle PCG before PCC and PCD. Do I understand your motion?
Yes.
Would you like to speak to that?
I just think that this had the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the use of the word referring to migrants as human capital. And I think that we need to, first of all, divide the concepts of human freedom of movement from the economic concept of freedom of movement of capital and other economic goods. I think this is the single thing that sticks out the worst of in the current plank as we have it, is referring to movement of human beings as human capital.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to answer some points of inquiry in the chat. Did anyone here oppose striking the word unreasonably? We have the vote total here, 11 to 4 to 1. So yes, there were people in committee who opposed it. I don't think that in the survey, if I'm remembering correctly last time, I do not want to misstate. In the raw percentages, it was a popular proposal. And the actual comments of people who took the time to write something out, it was controversial. One thing I will tell you about these surveys, very rarely does something in the percentages ever get below 75%, which you're like, yay, this is going to pass. It's the comments where the gold are, where people take the time to actually comment on it is a more accurate reflection from my experience on this committee of how things are going to go. So we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Brayman that we consider it's what PCG prior to the other two proposals in the ordering of our report. Is there any objection to that?
I object.
Would you like to speak to your objection at all, Mr. Choco?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think it's a good idea. Not that it shouldn't be.
You don't have to speak to it. I was just asking so the committee
No,
would
I
understand.
mean, I think my concern is that once we start onto this plank, if we set ourselves up with something that has a high chance of failing, which I think that this does, it sets us up to fail on all of the changes to the plank. And I also think that splitting it is not the most important thing that we have to do. In my opinion, striking unreasonably is the most important thing. And I don't want to get started down the path of failing to improve this plank. So I don't think we should take the split up first.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Choco. I'm not suggesting you do this. I just want to advise you of a right you have that you could at this point move to amend to combine PCG with, I don't have the letters here on the screen, with striking unreasonably so that it's all in one proposal. You don't have to do that. I'm just saying that is a right that you have.
Okay, I don't think I want to do that. No.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Would anyone else like to speak to this?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
give me the thing again that Mr. Brayman wants to see? I'm trying to catch up on the notes here.
I'm sorry.
What's the motion on the floor right now?
The motion on the floor is that in the ordering of our proposals, no matter what other factors are considered, PCG will be heard before those other two. I don't have the letters up on the screen.
C and D.
Correct. And just to advise the committee, even after this motion, it would still then be appropriate if someone wanted to make a main motion to combine PCG with striking unreasonably rather than hearing that separately. It's an order as an amendment here, but it also would be in order after disposal of this motion as a main motion. Star Child, Mr. McHose, Mr. Seebeck.
Point of information, the way you just worded that, it sounded like we're talking about the order in which our proposals will be presented. I'm not sure whether that was in regards to on the survey or to the delegates at convention, but I thought we were actually right now just trying to first vote on resolving what we're going to recommend out of committee among these different proposals.
Well, there's a weird situation here where these two overlap because we are moving some language. And when we get to that point, the committee does need to decide if PCG fails, if we're still going to recommend moving the entire block up to section 1. I've given my opinion, which is merely that as chair, that if it's not split, I do not think moving it is going to pass. And I would recommend that the committee drop moving it, make it contingent on PCG passing. So in order for that to happen, we would need to make a decision to hear PCG first and make moving it contingent upon PCG passing. Again, that's just my recommendation, but these two issues are not completely separate in this case, that the ordering decision does make a difference as to what we're recommending.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying. It is a little bit confusing. I think I like your recommendation that it makes sense to do the split first. Although I'm very much in favor of getting rid of the word unreasonably.
Are you moving to amend to combine PCG with the one, I can't see the letters, sorry, with PCD, so that in the split, we are striking the word unreasonably as well at the same time?
Well, I guess I would ask just informally, if I may, if there's anyone who would vote against splitting the personal liberty aspect of this plank from the economic liberty aspect of this plank if we delete that word. If there's not, then I see no reason not to, move ahead with the recommendation. I mean, clearly a majority of us are in favor of it, so we're going to pass that one way or another. It's just, the order things get done.
I'm not understanding your question.
I was just kind of asking as a straw poll, if there's anybody who's going to vote against dividing the plank between the personal liberty and economic liberty
Okay.
aspects of it.
The plank
Based
that's
on what we
already
do with-
passed this committee.
I'm confused then what you're asking me, Madam Chair, if I want to move. I thought you were asking me if I wanted to move to do that, to combine them.
Okay. How about this? It'll be cleaner. Mr. Cholko is going to move after we dispose of this motion to do just that. So if you're not understanding, I don't want to lead you into a motion. It feels very leading at this point right now. So if it's not something that's obvious to you, a motion you want to make, I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
Right.
Okay, Mr. McHose.
Okay, so from what I have gathered is, so what we're trying to figure out, that we're trying to have these proposals all figure out which ones will have the largest passive largest chance of passing. So you're saying if we actually want the one with unreasonably to pass, we would either combine the two or place the proposed amendment PCG before and then have PCD come after, so that they both can be addressed at convention, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That
And-
that was my personal gut from experience, is to go PCG, PCD, PCC.
Okay, and I support that as well.
But right now, just so we know that the only motion on the floor is to make PCG first.
Okay.
And to further elucidate on Starchild's point of inquiry as to the crossover between our proposals and ordering, some proposals do go in clusters. And that's basically what this is, because they're not mutually exclusive, but they are so intrinsically related that I do think we need to decide how to cluster them, because it is a cluster of proposals that are related to each other on one item. It's not two separate sentences at the beginning and the end, such as in omissions, where it's clear that those could be done separately. Though the committee could vote to combine those two, it's not necessary. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an idea. I'd like to combine C and D. Would that be in order? And is that a good idea?
It's not,
In your opinion, Madam Chair?
I think it's a bad idea.
Okay.
Frankly, PCC is very difficult if we're going,
Right. We're gonna strike and then move. Yeah.
right. I think
cleaner
we
if we just
have
move.
to split first. I really do. I really
Right.
think the only question is,
Right.
do we ask to strike the word unreasonably with the split before moving it to section 1, that one section, or after? Those
Right.
are the strategic decisions.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that I'm in favor of D because I voted for D. I'm not in favor of PCG. I don't know what we're gonna do, if we're gonna divide it or what. But I'm okay presenting G first and then C and D. I think it'll end up going that way anyways. I actually, I don't know if it'll go that way, but maybe the committee is leaning that way towards presenting proposal G. So, but my favorite was proposal D. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
And yeah, I was going to say the same thing, more so that if you feel that BCD has a larger chance of passing, if you combine the two, and then, I mean, there's a chance they could divide the question, etc. But if they don't divide the question, both amendments would fail.
It doesn't stop us from still presenting D of removing unreasonably with the combined plank.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because that's people wanted to make sure that was addressed as well.
Yeah, what I do think, and nothing stopping us from doing it, I do think if PCG fails on the floor, that we should not try to move it to section 1, because there are economic and personal freedoms combined there, and I don't think that will pass. Mr. Ricuro, you still had your hand up.
I will lower it. I'm sorry.
Mr. Seebeck.
I am a little puzzled here. What is the current motion on the floor?
The current motion on the floor is to consider PCG in the ordering of our proposals, no matter what other factors are taken into account, before PCD or PCC.
Thank you. I take it then that this is a parliamentary inquiry, that any motion to amend G or any other ones at this point will be out of order because it's not in the scope of what we're talking about?
Correct. And that would be a motion to reconsider.
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further debate, is there, I think there is, but I want to make sure. Is there objection to the motion on the floor, which is to hear, no matter what other factors are taken into consideration in our survey, to hear PCG before PCD or PCC?
I'm not going to object anymore, so if it was just me, then there might not be.
Star Child, you,
Yes.
oh, it highlighted to you. It's because you were typing. It thought you were talking.
Oh, okay.
All right, seeing none, that passes. And now Mr. Choco had indicated he wished to make a motion.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure, I know you just said it, but I want to make sure I understand this right. If we combine D with G that we just moved to the front of the line, that doesn't, they don't both have to pass. I'm just confusing myself here. I don't want to combine D with something that decreases its chance of passage.
And I don't know if you're asking my opinion. Okay.
Yeah, I
let
guess
me-
I am, I think,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Well, first, for everyone, parliamentary wise, what if it was moved to combine G and D, what would happen is D would disappear and the word unreasonably would be added to G, because right now it's in there, so that it would all be part of G. My personal opinion is that decreases the chance of striking unreasonably. In my personal opinion, I'm sure other people, could argue other ways. But every single platform committee I've been on, we've tinkered with this plank. I'm familiar with a lot of the platform surveys and just arguing it. That is my personal opinion. But that's just my gut. Take that
Yeah,
for what it's worth.
so, I know I said I was gonna make this motion, but I'm second guessing that now. I don't think I want to do that at this time.
I'm going to ask you, just based upon your comment, you don't need to make this motion, but I think this is what you want to do. Are you then moving that we would consider PCD immediately after PCG, whether or not PCG passes?
So to be honest with you, I can't get my head around what is the best way. I think that PCD is the most important thing we have on our plate on this plank. But I can't get my head around what is the most likely way to pass that. So I'm hesitant to make any motions because I realize that I might be thinking incorrectly about it. So I don't think I'm not making any motion at this moment.
Okay, anyone else have any thoughts?
Yeah, Madam Chair, why would we not consider D before G? What's the rationale in this arrangement?
Well, that question's already been settled.
Okay. All right.
Anyone further? If not, I'm going
I
to.
would like to vote to, I would like to make a motion to reconsider the vote because I think people were considering possibly wanting to put D before G.
How did you vote on?
I voted in favor.
You cannot. Okay, yeah, you're on the winning side. Okay. So there's a motion to reconsider putting G first. Did you wish to speak further to that, Mr. McHose?
No, I don't. I think it's self-evident.
Mr. Brayman, did you wish to speak?
No, I wanted to make a different motion.
Star Child.
I may be dense here, confused, but it's not self-evident to me. Josh, I'd like to hear your reasons for not putting G first.
Some people would like D to go first to make sure that could possibly be the, you can pass D and then still do G and make those amendment, make those passages, right? Is that correct, Karen?
So D is getting the word, excuse me.
I'm saying you can do
No, wait, stop,
We're just
stop.
getting rid of the
We're
word
not, Star
unreasonably.
Child, we are not gonna have crosstalk. Mr.
are not
McCose,
mutually exclusive, correctly?
correct. D could just as easily go before G.
That's the reason why I would like to reconsider.
Okay, now Star Child.
Okay, just to make sure I'm understand, D is getting rid of the word unreasonably. So you're saying have a vote on that as our first proposal and then try to move the division?
That is what Mr. McCose is going to move
Okay.
if we reconsider.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. I don't see that getting rid of the word unreasonably first as a separate motion would interfere with getting the plank divided between the two sections.
Mr. Thompson, then Mr. Ricuro.
D before G would allow it sequentially to decide whether or not the body wants to remove unreasonably or not. And then we would decide whether or not we want to divide the plank or not. And then after we divide it, we would decide whether or not we want to relocate one of the divided sections or not. So it flows. in
Okay,
that way.
thank you. Mr. Ricuro,
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a request for information, we were considering proposal G to be heard first before C or D. That was adopted without objection, if I'm understanding that correctly. Correct, Madam Chair?
correct.
Okay, so now we're in the reconsideration, or we're considering proposal D.
We are, whether or not we are going to reconsider our decision on G. Then we have to actually vote again on making G first.
Could we combine those two votes?
No.
Okay, I rather.
I think we lost you, Mr. Ricuro.
No, I'm here. Maybe I must have had a delay. You hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Are we going to a ballot?
Well, Star Child and Mr. Thompson's hands were raised.
Apologies.
And Mr. Choco did raise a point in chat, which everyone may wish to consider, and it would bring to mind a different motion. He had said, why are we taking up the specific ordering before we see survey data? I did address that earlier, but there's certainly room for disagreement with the chair on this. Doesn't the survey help us with the ordering proposals on this plank? Yes. And that is a perfectly valid question. And that would be up to the committee to decide if they would wish to wait to see data on this. And this would bring up potentially a different motion. I know we're in the middle of reconsider. I'm answering though the point of parliamentary inquiry, I guess, or just point of information that was in chat. It would bring up perhaps a different motion that we simply make PCC contingent upon PCG passing, no matter which goes first, PCG or PCD. Mr. Choco.
Yeah, I don't know if I heard your rationale earlier. I guess I didn't for why we are considering this at this time. Could you bring me up to speed on that?
Okay, I'll try to restate it. Just realize that I'm not feeling entirely at my best today. And I do need to take some more Advil, I think. I'm starting to get a terrible headache. Not from you guys, just from life. Let me see if I'm going to I think I was colored by the fact that PCC kind of depends upon what happens with PCG. And since they were all three on the same plank, that it seemed to me that the committee itself should make that strategic decision, not just for our committee report, because we could always move to reconsider if the survey data comes out wildly variant. But I think how we present these on our survey also matters, and presenting PCG first will make it make sense. PCC more specifically, and less so PCD.
So what we're actually talking about here then is ordering these for the survey?
Well, I was saying ordering them for both, just to know our strategy. We could always change our mind afterwards. But it's not unreasonable to just talk about ordering them for the survey. But as I'm hearing the discussions and even hearing myself say it all out loud, I'm thinking the real issue here may not even be whether G or D is first. It's whether or not we're going to make C contingent on G passing.
What's the current motion to reconsider about? I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn. I just lost track of where we are.
To reconsider making G first in our ordering, not just on the survey, but in the order we present, no matter what other factors are taken into consideration. Mr. Ricuro. Mr. Ricuro?
Do you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, I want to be recognized when we get back to when we're done with this. I have a motion, but not related to this. Back to the main motion.
Mr. Brayman?
Yes, my understanding is that we can still change the order that we present this at convention after we get the results of the survey, so that it seems to me that we're spending an awful lot of time on an issue that will be clarified more after the survey anyway. So while we can reconsider it now, a motion to reconsider that order will also be in order at any time after the survey too, as I understand it. And maybe it will be much easier to actually do the reconsider vote then, when our sense of what the body wants is a little clearer.
I withdraw my motion.
Is there any objection to Mr. McHo's withdrawing his motion? Okay, Mr. Ricuro, you said you had a motion to make.
Yes. So part of this, if I'm reading the agenda correctly, is to where would we move in the section for in proposal C. We're proposing to move 3.4 to section 1. Where will we move it? I would like to move if this were to pass, to move it to the end of section 1. So it would be 110.
We are not at the numbering decision yet.
Okay, well then, okay, well.
Okay, to move things along, I'm gonna make a motion here because I think I figured out what the real issue is here. I would like to move to make proposal PCC contingent upon PCG passing, with PCD not being part of that equation whatsoever. So that if PCG, the split, does not pass, we will not suggest moving the platform plank up to section 1. Okay, everyone is keeping their hands up, and I don't know if it's on this motion or not. Mr. Ricuro? You're really having sound, okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I'm still in the numbering thing, so just save me for that.
Okay,
And can you restate the motion? You want to make which one contingent upon the other?
PCC contingent upon the split in PCG happening. Mr. Seebeck?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That makes sense. My question is, how does D factor into that at all?
It doesn't. D can still go forward whether it's moved or not. I don't think we can move it without PCG
Okay, that
passing.
makes sense. That makes sense. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? And please lower hands when not waiting in line or done speaking. Would anyone else like to speak to this? And it smells like Wayne is burning the house down. So in a minute, I'm gonna have to yell, Wayne, don't burn the house down. Anyone else like to speak on this?
Wayne, put out the fire.
Okay, is there any objection to making PCC contingent upon PCG passing? Okay, seeing none, where we are at then right now, and as was already mentioned, these things can be reconsidered later, that at least right now in our survey and in our report, though we can reconsider this based upon data, we have PCG, then PCD, and then move to PCC only if PCG passes. PCD will be presented regardless of whether or not PCG passes. So that's where we're at right now. Now, Mr. Ricuro, before you make your motion, just wanted to let you know, we already numbered space exploration as 10. So would you be, and your motion was to put, if we end up moving this to the end of section 1, do you mean after space exploration, if that passes, or before?
Yes, Madam Chair, after space exploration, if it passes. Just make it simple.
Okay, would you like to speak to that?
It's self-explanatory. I forgot about space exploration, but if it's to go in section 1, I just think that it's firearms and then space exploration and then migration. Obviously 3 different topics, but the beginning of section 1 is very much about, you know, individual autonomy and speech. And so it's like you're going through the you know, you're going through different things that are related. So I would say it works best there versus trying to squeeze it in between one of the other planks.
Point of order.
Yes.
This is a new proposal that's not part of the agenda. Would
Yes,
not
it
be
is. It's
appropriate
item
to-
E, isn't it? No,
Omar's-
I said as well as numbering decision, if it is separated and moved to section 1. So it is part of item D on the agenda.
Okay.
Mr. Ricuro, your hand is still raised?
Sorry, I started typing and I forget that.
Okay. I'm going to suggest an alternate without moving to amend because it's up to the committee. But I did say this on the list and I would just like the committee to consider it. I actually think it makes more sense going after 1.1, self-ownership. Because if you can't, like, it just seems to flow to me, you own your body. What's the most basic thing you do with your body is move around. It seems to me quite jarring to go all the way through space exploration and then something as basic as freedom of movement. But I'm not making a motion. I'm just giving another idea. Right now, the motion on the floor is to move it to the very end of the platform, regardless of whether space exploration passes or not. If space exploration passes, it will be after that. Would anyone else like to speak? Star Child.
Yeah, I agree with you, Madam Chair, and I call the question because I think we're just taking too much time on this. If we really
You're not
decide on
allowed
one-
to call questions on committees.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But you can move to amend.
No, let's just vote on Omar's thing and I mean, yeah, it's.
It's actually quickest to move to amend.
Oh, is it?
Yes. If that's where you
I'm
think.
not sure I see how. I mean, I agree with you. I would like to make it section 1.2, but it pains me how much time we're taking on these questions of where things go, because I'd like to get to Mark's and my proposal before we run out of time tonight. Yeah, if if you can explain how it makes it quicker to amend,
It will take longer. I'm not going to argue for what you should do, Star Child. So if you do not wish
Okay,
to
no,
make
I
that
just don't
amendment,
understand the rationale that it would be faster. But
we're wasting time with you trying to get me to explain how it saves time.
okay. That's fine.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Okay, in that case, I will move to amend to place it at 1.2.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Now debate. Would you like to speak to that?
Just that it makes more sense. It's a very important issue versus space exploration. So I'd say I'd move it up, and 1.2 is as good as anywhere higher up in the platform.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Would anyone else like to speak to the amendment? Star Child, I'm getting comments that your mic is very, very
Yeah,
sensitive.
just a minute. I'm having technical issues here.
Okay, I'll mute you on my end because like we're hearing even your breathing, your mic is super sensitive. Okay, seeing no further discussion, is there any objection to the amendment that instead of moving it to the very end of section 1, to move it to 1.2?
I object. I'm kind of hoping others do.
Oh, God.
Wayne, can you shut the door? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm Mr. Ricuro. So there is objection. We will move to a roll call vote then. And what we are voting on is a motion to amend. Instead of moving it to the end of section 1, it will be moved to section 1.2. If this passes, the main motion will then be moving into section 1.2, which we will have to then vote on that as the main motion. Of course, further amendments would be in order. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, Mark Raymond,
Aye.
Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunhart,
Aye.
Matt Choco,
Abstain.
Sean Hickman,
Aye.
Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Omar Okoro votes nay. Mike Seebeck,
Aye.
Star Child,
Aye.
go, Terry Taylor,
Abstain.
and John Thompson.
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, did I miss anyone? We're gonna switch here for just a moment. All right, not wrong sheet. All right, Madam Chair, I'm showing 9 in favor, 1 opposed, and 2 express abstentions.
Okay, that passes. We're now in the main motion of moving this numbering to 1.2. Is there any objection to the main motion? Hearing none, that passes. So we are now on to item E. If you could bring up proposal PCW.
Yep. Right there.
Adult rights and responsibilities. As this was Mr. Brayman's proposal, I would like to inquire of Mr. Brayman if he has a suggestion or motion he would like to make as to where he would like to see this appear in section 1?
Yes, I think it could go at 1.3. It sort of is a very central point. Although you know, it could also go after parental rights and responsibilities. Either of those.
Are you making a motion for either of those?
Yes, let me say after parental.
After 1.6,
Yes.
what's presently 1.6. It's always understood that some things might get shifted around. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to number PCW to follow after what is currently plank number 1.6. I don't know if you wish to speak to that further, Mr. Raymond.
No.
Mr.
Don't want to
Thompson.
waste any more time.
I support this movement of putting this blank between parental rights and criminal justice. Parental rights and the rights that are outlined here, adult rights and responsibilities, are very much aligned, right? And so it makes sense that they would be next to each other, and I support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to this? Seeing none, is there any objection to this numbering decision?
I object. I'm still a little confused.
Okay, please let me know your confusion so I can help to clarify.
I gotta pull up the numbering of the actual. Just give me a second. I gotta pull up the working copy, so I can make more sense of what we're doing.
Okay, we'll give
So
you
I
one
can
moment.
Okay, so you're saying where between where?
To put it immediately after 1.6, which is parental rights.
Okay, now I withdraw my objection.
Okay, is there any objection to moving this till immediately after current plank 1.6? Okay, seeing none, that passes. Okay, now we are on to the Star Child proposal of, we need to get that on the screen when you have a moment, Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, just give me one
Yep.
second. I just need to just mark that we passed this without objection. And I have the language already ready to go. Right here.
And Wayne brought me bacon because bacon cures all. Sorry if there's any vegans in the room. Sorry, Star Child. But for me, bacon is the cure. But I do apologize.
At least I
That's
can't
offensive.
smell it. That's an advantage.
I'm sure I have it on screen.
Okay. It is on the screen. We have a proposal from Star Child to modify plank 1.1 self-ownership and rename it individual autonomy, and to strike the first sentence, which reads, individuals own their bodies and have rights over them that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate, and instead put in the sentence, people are not property. Our bodies are, at least in part, ourselves, and no other individual or organization, including government, can ever legitimately claim ownership or sovereignty over your body. Star Child, would you like to speak to your motion?
Hang on, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I think I probably said this more eloquently in writing than I'm going to be able to do here. So I hope that people read the exchanges on the list. The basic problem is that if we say people own themselves, either that ownership is transferable or it's not. In either case, I think it raises issues. If it's not transferable, then arguably it's not real ownership. Do we want to say that there's such a thing as ownership where you don't have the right to sell or transfer ownership of your property? But if that is a possibility, then it raises troubling questions about people selling themselves into perpetual slavery, perhaps even government regulating them into perpetual slavery in such a way that their consent has at least nominally been obtained or something. I think it fuels criticism of libertarians as wanting to put everything in property terms. And I think all of this can be addressed by simply stating that existence precedes ownership. Individuals are themselves before they own any property, and that relationship is a unitary one. When you say that someone has ownership of themselves, you're saying they're kind of both the subject and the object, and I think that's creating an artificial division where none actually exists. So again, this wouldn't necessitate any changes in libertarian positions on anything whatsoever. It's strictly just a philosophical grounding, and in fact, the wording I'm proposing doesn't even say that we don't own ourselves. It's just implicit in saying that people are not property. But I think having that statement in there makes our position stronger, and I think it would be a positive change, affirming the centrality of the non-aggression principle as opposed to property as the basis of libertarianism.
Thank you, Starchild. Mr. Seebeck, then Mr. Brayman, and then I put myself on deck.
Be short and sweet. I demolished all these arguments on the list. This does not clarify the blank. It turns it on its head. If people are not property, then what are we? And if that we're not property, how can we do anything with ourselves? How can we donate part of ourselves, like an organ, to save somebody else's life? How can we rent ourselves out as a sex worker, et cetera, and so on? Sorry, but property is the basis of self-ownership in our very existence. And we can't go away from that.
Mr. Brayman?
Yes. To suggest an amendment, to move an amendment, to strike the change the blue sentences that begin with "people are not property" and end with "sovereignty over your own body," and to go back to restore most of the first sentence, just to say individuals have a right to control their own body or their own bodies that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. That way we get rid of the statement own their bodies, which is really a redundancy. So just individuals have rights to control their bodies that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
Okay, what I think you're proposing is more properly a substitute. And that's the way I'm going to treat it.
That's
So,
acceptable. Yes.
yeah, so Starchild's remains intact as the primary. And does your substitute include changing the title from self-ownership to individual autonomy?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Should I include the rest of the language that I proposed later on in this? That's something
You
should consider later on.
You certainly could if you wanted to combine this all because a substitute.
Will it be appropriate to move it later on?
Yes, because we already had it separately.
Okay, so let's do this one at a time and simplify things. So, individuals have rights to control their own body that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
Have rights to control their own bodies?
Have
Or
rights to control their own bodies. Yeah, have rights.
Point of information.
Yes, Star Child?
I think you said it a couple different ways, Mark. If you're proposing rights to control their bodies, I would strongly prefer that over rights to control their own bodies.
Okay, take away own. I agree. I like that. Let's do that. That other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. So take out and have rights over them. Yeah, and now get rid of the two sentences beginning with people are not property.
Where do we end at, Mr. Raymond?
He's
And that
taking
your
out,
body.
he's taking out all of the Star Child new sentence.
Okay.
And he's also changing the title.
Yeah, I like this. Well, I like that part of it. I'm going to propose in addition to the title later on, individual autonomy and personal responsibility. Maybe we could get that in there right now.
I would do that right now while you're proposing your substitute.
Individual autonomy and personal responsibility.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'm going to ask once again to have these things ready to go ahead of time.
Well, I had the title ready to go. That is part of my motion that was on the list.
you had individual responsibility on yours, but you're changing it to personal here. Personal responsibilities.
Individual autonomy. You know what? Individual autonomy and responsibilities is good. Individual autonomy and responsibilities.
Plural.
Yep.
Okay.
Or, you know what? Responsibility singular sounds better too. I like that suggestion, quasi suggestion.
Okay, so with the title, Mr. Secretary, he is proposing is individual autonomy and responsibility. So take out and personal.
The just personal. Leave the and.
Oh, okay.
Okay, give me that again, Madam Chair. I'm sorry.
Well, I want to make sure, Mr. Brayman, is it correct on screen now? Individual autonomy and personal responsibility?
No, individual autonomy and responsibility.
Yeah, so take out personal, right?
And we're treating this as a substitute, right, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Yeah.
So would you like to speak to your substitute now, Mr. Brayman, or would you like to wait until we're done perfecting the primary?
Let me speak quickly that the intent is to remove this philosophical question of whether individuals can own themselves by not putting that into the text, and yet also not adding the complex argument and philosophy that were the second and third sentences of Starchild's proposal, which are I think unnecessary to this plank. I think the sentence that I've written now, the shortened sentence about controlling their bodies, says it as short and sweet as we need.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Now we're on the primary. So just so everyone knows, we're going to perfect the primary first, and then we're going to go to Mr. Brayman's substitute. And I did want to speak just briefly on the primary, though some of what I have to say would also be applicable, though less strongly so, to the substitute. I think we have to tread very carefully when we are looking at, I'd have to go to LPD because I don't want to speak out of turn like I did last time, and got humbled pretty quickly. But I'm pretty sure the title of this plank has been that way since 1972. I will have to double check that. This is probably one of the favorite planks in the party. I think we need to tread very, very carefully. And I think honestly that this is a solution looking for a problem, and that we have plenty of others to deal with. That's just my personal opinion. And about people not being property, I disagree that we don't own ourselves. And in fact, I think Starchild made my argument for me when he said existence precedes bodies. So it doesn't make it circular. Existence logically precedes you having your body. And if we want to posit some sci-fi future where you could put your consciousness into another body, then you would own that body and not the one you were in before. So I think actually it is readily self-apparent that we own ourselves. And that has been a core tenet of this party since the beginning. And my view of committees is very, very conservative, that we are not here to direct philosophical change in this party. We're here to reflect the change that has already happened. And I have not seen this in the grassroots whatsoever. Mr. Taylor.
Okay, so I tend to see some merit in all three or all four of the people who have spoken thus far. And I do think it could be argued that, you know, people are not property. I do think it could be argued that people are property. It depends on your point of view philosophically at the current moment. And this is an abstract question. And it's my personal feeling, though, is if there is going to be any value in amendments that we make to the platform, then it should be grounded in public policy. So I'm looking here for something which is related to some sort of policy change or policy stance that we want to change. And I haven't seen that so far in this proposal, and maybe somebody can clarify that for me, but I would like to, if there is a concrete policy change that this is related to, I would like to hear what that is. I think some of the changes moving towards the language of individual autonomy do have merit, but this is kind of moving in a philosophical direction that I don't see as being concrete. So I wouldn't necessarily oppose this, but I would like to hear if some people can kind of ground this in something that's just more than just like, you know, again, conversations over a coffee at 11 p.m. at night or something like that. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Taylor. Starchild.
Yes. Excuse me. The philosophy, I think, matters, and sometimes it matters when even it's not immediately apparent how it translates into practical policy, but it's the kind of thing that does tend to manifest sooner or later, that if you have the philosophy wrong, there will be potentially consequences there. Karen, to address your argument about consciousness, yeah, I don't think there's anything incompatible there to say, yeah, I mean, let me rephrase that. Your view sounds like a metaphysical one, where you're presuming that consciousness is separate from the physical body and not something that arises out of the physical body. I think there's probably lots of libertarians who believe both ways on that question. But if consciousness does arise out of a physical body, if there's nothing, metaphysical like a soul going on, if it's just how we're wired, the neurons in our brain and everything, then what you said would be incorrect. I think existence is different than property. Again, the property relationship is there's a subject and an object. And, we're not there now in terms of policy of people actually being able to sell themselves into slavery and so forth. But we're trying to, lay out a vision of where libertarians want to go. And in our vision, if we say people are property, then it does implicitly follow that we want people to be able to sell themselves into perpetual slavery with all the possible ramifications and complications that that position implies. I think that rephrasing it in terms of autonomy is more philosophically correct and covers our basis better. I'm going to support Mark's substitute, even though it's not as, I think, clearly worded or as much where I would like to see us go, but I do think it has more of a chance of passing, and it leaves the door open. It would be somewhat of a sudden change to explicitly say people are not property. Although again, I do think that is the after thinking extensively about this issue, I feel that is the correct position. But I will support Mark's substitute and hope we can pass that so that we're not taking a strong position one way or another in terms of whether people are property and have an ownership relationship with themselves, or simply have the right to control their bodies because their bodies are them.
I have a question to ask you, you don't need to do this, but just to see if we can move things along. Are you withdrawing your motion in favor of Mark's? Or are you asking the committee if you can withdraw your motion in favor of Mark's?
I wasn't. I guess I would still be interested in seeing for the record how many people. Well, now in the interest of time, yeah, I'll withdraw it because I don't think it's going to pass committee, and even if it does pass committee, I think it would have less of a chance of passing at convention. And I think Mark's language goes some distance towards where I would want, at least, to take us more to a kind of a neutral place on the question, and I think that would be a positive change. And maybe it is better that we go slowly on this, as you say. So, yeah. And unless there's someone that really, is like you say, the motion belonging to the body. If there's somebody that really wants me to not withdraw it, then I won't. But I'm inclined to withdraw it at this point because I think Mark's is a reasonable substitute.
Is there any objection to Starchild withdrawing his motion in favor of Mr. Brayman's substitute?
I have a question about how we will proceed at this point.
Well, it depends on if there's an objection to his withdrawal.
Well, the objection depends on how we will proceed, because my understanding is if he did not withdraw, we would perfect the main motion, the initial motion. Then we would have an opportunity to perfect my motion before voting on it. I would like the opportunity to perfect my motion before voting on it.
We would, because procedurally, this would be as if you initially made this motion. Like it would be like a fresh proposal. We would be able to perfect it.
Okay, because I want to amend it to include the rest of my my wording for this plank item. Because I think that solves the questions that other people have had about why make a change if it doesn't have any effect on policy. The rest of my proposal for this plank does have an effect on policy, and I believe it fits together with what we've done so far here, which is also partly intended to shorten the combined proposal.
Okay. If you're intending upon doing that, I would say that until that's fully debated, I don't think people can meaningfully know whether they're going to object to Starchild withdrawing. So it's going to stay with the body right now if that's your intentions. And just an FYI, I learned something, which this may affect people's understanding, but in a different way. The actual phrase self-ownership first appeared in the platform in 2014. Those exact words didn't appear before then. So that certainly blunts a historical argument, but it raises the other issue of the party voting to add this less than a decade ago. Whether people want to take that into consideration or not, their entirety, but I wanted to bring up that phrase was not entitled that until 2014. Okay. We're we're still on the primary motion. Does anyone have anything to add further on the primary motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ricuro.
request for information. So
Yes.
I didn't hear a second. Is there an objection to?
I decided him withdrawing it in light of Mr. Brayman's express intention of wanting to really substantially modify his plank, that I don't think committee members can meaningfully make a decision on whether they would object to the withdrawal or not. So,
Point of order.
yes.
Wouldn't a substitute get modified and voted on first before going back to the primary motion?
Oh, yeah, that's why I'm not allowing you to withdraw it.
Well, it sounds to me like then I withdraw or not. I guess I'm confused.
I object to I then object to the withdrawal.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brayman. Is there any further amendments? Mr. Choco?
I don't think it matters anymore. I was going to appeal from the ruling of the chair, but if Mr. Brainman also objects to removal, I think I will not do that.
Thank you, Mr. Choco. Is there any further debate on the primary? Okay, hearing none, we are moving to the substitute. Mr. Brayman.
I would like to move to add the language that I put in the server this morning to complete the remainder of this item.
Okay, so if we go to the agenda, Mr. Brayman is moving to add that chunk of blue text, which I will read while the secretary is putting it on screen. It would be added to the end of this plank. Individuals should have a presumption of health and should not have to prove they are healthy to avoid forced quarantine, isolation, vaccination, wearing of masks or other protective gear, or other restrictions of their rights or freedoms. Responsibility for modifying behavior to protect against disease transmission lies foremost with the people who wish to avoid getting infected, not with those who merely wish to continue their and their families' normal daily activities in public. Unless such individuals have a specific reason to believe that they or their families are infected in a way that can directly and seriously harm others they meet in public, they are not engaging in violence or aggression or fraud. Other individuals and groups have no right to respond to them with violence, aggression, or fraud, nor to enlist the government to engage in prior restraint in order to prevent a theoretical possibility of harm. Mr. Brayman, would you like to speak to your amendment?
I think
You're breaking up.
Oh, I decline at this point. I'd like to hear what other people think.
Thank you. Mr. Brown, then Mr. Seebeck.
Yes, just in the first amendment that Mr. Brayman proposed about changing the first line there, I think grammatically we should have individuals have the right to control their bodies. Instead of rights in the first line, it should be the right. So I would move that amendment.
Okay, did you get that, Mr. Secretary?
The first line should be the right.
Individuals have the right to control their bodies.
So we're going to subtract the S there.
And the in front of right.
Yeah.
Or A in front of right, given the rest of the sentence, perhaps.
I'm sorry, child, you do need to be recognized. You can't just jump ahead of everybody.
Well, I'm amenable to either one, A or the, but whichever people think is most grammatically correct.
But you need to let me know what your motion is, Mr. Brown.
Well, I'll stick with the.
Okay, thank you. So individuals have the right to control their bodies.
That other individuals, et cetera, may not violate.
That other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
Correct.
Okay, would anyone like, just speak out loud. Now you can do that, Star Child, if you wish, because there's lines there's hands up that I don't want to lose their spots, but just know that you can't amend that right now, Star Child. If you prefer that to be A, you're going to need to vote that down.
Madam Chair, I have a point it's not a point of order, but it's a request for information because it's important to this. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut the line.
Go ahead.
In the original motion that in the original substitute that Mr. Brayman proposed, there is a difference in the language on the first sentence than what's on the agenda. And Mr. Brown is trying to amend something that I'm confused about.
I can answer that again. That was, in fact, you have the amendments kind of backwards there. It should be individuals have the right. Individuals have the right. And now we have to put the between have and rights, and then S goes off of rights. There, individuals have the right, singular.
And that was all?
That's it.
Okay, because okay. All right, got it now.
Okay, would anyone like to speak to this? Just speak up, because I'm keeping the hands up for when we're back, because I know most people want to talk on the
Point of order.
Yes, Mr. Seebeck.
I think this is out of order because it goes beyond the scope of the original notice of the original motion.
I don't rule that. Well taken.
I appeal the ruling from the chair.
Okay, I will explain my ruling. Both of these motions were properly noticed. All Mr. Brayman is doing is combining them. So any member can just simply vote this down and remove his as in hyphen move his original motion separately, but this was in fact noticed. He's just combining the two.
I disagree because the topics of the two are totally different, even though they're within the same plank. One talks about self-ownership or individual property. The rest of it talks about presumption of health and disease, which has absolutely nothing to do with the first part.
Thank you, Mr. Seebeck. Would anyone else like to speak to the appeal from the ruling of the chair?
Yeah, this is Elmar.
Yes.
I understand Mr. Seebeck's I understand his objection, and I'm kind of feeling the same way. But at the same time, this was going to be the next item that was going to be discussed. The only thing that's different is that now the first sentence has been kind of changed a little bit from what was on the agenda to what's on screen right now. We were going to get there anyways. So in theory, I agree with Mr. Seebeck in terms of I think he's making more of a procedural argument than a notice argument. But I'm gonna just because we're gonna get to the same place, I'm going to vote to sustain the ruling of the chair.
Would anyone else like to speak on the appeal?
I would.
Mr. Brayman.
I too would like to sustain the ruling of the chair. I point out that the original language of this plank started out with a sentence that talked about other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate rights. All of the text that we come up to next, talking about the presumption of health and not having to prove that they're healthy, talks about specific actions that we know that governments, groups, and individuals have taken to violate these autonomy rights, these bodily rights. So I think this is completely within the scope of not only the motions were placed in the agenda, but also well within the scope of this plank as it currently exists.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak regarding the appeal?
I concur with what's already been said in support of sustaining the ruling of the chair.
Anyone else? I will speak last, as is my prerogative. Again, notice was given that an amendment to this point would be made. It's just a matter of when he would make it. So I do not think at all that this is a notice requirement. I believe what it's an objection to is that Mr. Seebeck would prefer that language not be in there. What I would suggest, if my ruling is sustained,
Please don't put words in my mouth.
point taken. What I would suggest, if somebody would prefer that this language not be there, and this should become the primary motion, that they move a substitute that just has Mr. Brayman's original language. That would be their recourse if that's what they felt was more appropriate. Since there is objection to sustaining the ruling of the chair, if the secretary could please take a roll call vote.
Yep. Just one moment here. All right, Mark Raymond.
The vote is aye. to
I'm
sustain-
sorry, I didn't explain well. A yes vote would sustain the ruling of the chair. A no vote would overturn the ruling of the chair.
Yes to sustaining the ruling of the chair.
Ted Brown.
Yes to sustain.
Joe Brunkhart.
Abstain.
Matt Choco.
Aye.
John Hickman.
Yep, I abstain here.
Okay. Ken Matz.
Aye.
Josh McHose.
Abstain.
Omar Crow will vote aye to sustain. And Mike Seebeck.
No.
Starchild.
Yes.
Terry Taylor.
No.
John Thompson.
No.
Okay. Don't think I missed anyone, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have 12 votes here. I have 6 in favor, 3 opposed, and 3 express abstentions.
The ruling of the chair is sustained. We are back on Mr. Brown's grammatical amendment to individuals have the right. Does anyone whose hands raised wish to speak on that?
Yes.
Go ahead, Starchild.
I think that if we just say individuals have the right to control their bodies that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate, that may be grammatically correct. I don't know for sure, but it sounds clunky. I think if you add a right after bodies, comma, bodies, comma, a right that other individuals, etc., that would solve the problem. Or you could just say individuals have a right to control their bodies and then leave the rest of the sentence as it is. I think either of those solutions would fix it, but the way it is right now, I think is awkward at best.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to Mr. Brown's amendment? Okay, seeing none, since there is obviously objection, we are voting on Mr. Brown's amendment, which is instead of individuals have rights to control their bodies, it would be individuals have the right to control their bodies. Whenever you are ready, Mr. Secretary.
Yep, just let me get a new ballot up. Finish my comment in the chat. Okay. So this is the Brown amendment, correct, Madam Chair?
Yes.
All right. I think I have it on the screen there. I do have it on the screen. Okay. Mark Raymond.
Aye.
And Ted Brown.
Aye.
Joe Brunkhart.
Pass.
Matt Choco.
No.
John Hickman.
No.
That was a no.
I believe he said abstain, Mr. Secretary.
Okay. Yeah, he's coming a little low. Ken Matz.
Aye.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Omar Crow will I'm gonna abstain right now. Mike Seebeck.
Aye.
Starchild.
I will abstain.
Curry Taylor,
Abstain.
John Thompson.
No,
Okay, coming back to Mr. Brunhart,
I'll vote no.
okay. Don't think I missed anyone. Madam Chair, I'm showing 5 in favor, 3 opposed, 4 express abstentions.
Okay, that amendment passes. I'm counting on both Mr. Taylor and Mr. Choco to be honest with me here. Who had their hand raised first? I know Mr. Choco has a
I
short,
think Mr. Taylor did.
okay. Mr. Taylor,
I move to divide the question.
oh, this is fun with a substitute. You are moving me into uncharted territory, Mr. Taylor. But oh, this is going to be fun. But I do believe it is in order. I don't think it's an automatic right, though. I do believe the body will need to vote on dividing the question. I don't think it's demandable upon the demand of one member. So I will ask, Mr. Taylor, did you wish to speak to your motion to divide?
Yeah, without getting too much into debate, I think a lot of us feel that the added paragraph here at the end of this is quite a bit different than the spirit of the rest of the plank. And I think and the amendment to the plank that has been proposed. So I think it's in order and germane to divide the question.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Brayman. I have a question for
I,
you.
yes,
Would you be amenable to, just reading the room, withdrawing that amendment and taking it up separately as you originally proposed on the agenda?
if we can do this quickly, yes.
I think that will be the quickest way to handle it, and it has the same effect of Mr. Taylor's motion to divide.
Yes,
Would that satisfy you, Mr. Taylor?
yes. Oh,
Yes, it would.
Is there any objection to us handling it that way?
Am I gonna keep my place in line to amend Brayman's thing when it
Yes,
comes back
once-
up?
Yes, I have you
Then
first.
yes, then I'm good with it then.
Okay, hearing no objection. Mr. Secretary, that last big chunk of text, we're gonna handle that separately as item G, as we originally were. So we are now on the short substitute. Since that text is now not going to be added, I do think now, are there any further amendments? Let me ask this first to Mr. Brayman. Start
Yes, I have an amendment. I would like to propose deleting the words or their families.
No, that's not, we're not dealing with that right now.
Or
we're
and their
deal-
families, excuse me. Okay.
Yeah,
Which question is this? Is just on the question of dividing or not?
No, we are we're gonna handle that division as we originally were as a separate proposal under G. Right now, we're back to Mr. Brayman's original substitute that you favored.
Okay, then yes, I propose we add a comma after bodies and the words a right, just to make the sentence flow smoothly as Ted has modified it. Or excuse me, yeah, that's right, because the S is not there, so it's singular right now. Individuals have the right, so it would be a right.
So so your amendment is individuals have the right to control their bodies, comma, a right that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
Correct.
Giving the secretary a moment to get that up. Is there any further discussion on that?
You know, actually thinking thinking about it. This may be opening a can of worms, I'm not sure, but really everything after bodies is kind of redundant. I mean, this is the nature of rights. If someone has a right, then other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate it. And that's true for every right that we talk about in our platform. I think, especially if we do leave the language about presumption of health and so forth in there, that would help shorten the plank overall. And I do agree with Mark that the language about health and so forth, I think is quite germane to the overall topic of this plank.
That's not on the table right now.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I think maybe I'd rather move to strike everything after bodies in that sentence. That would actually make more sense than trying to wordsmith it further.
Okay, so the motion then, instead, he amended his motion before I stated it. He wants to remove, so individuals have the right to control their bodies, period. He wants
Correct.
to strike that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. To answer Matt Cholko's question in text, before this amendment, I was going to do that, but now things are getting substantially modified further that I don't think the body can meaningfully know whether they will object to withdrawing his motion, because this is I think a very substantive change, and there may be more. Would you have you spoken to that,
Yes.
Mr. Brayman?
I'm confused by Mr. Choko's concern. I thought that the Star Child proposal was already withdrawn. My understanding is that we are only focusing on this, and I support the Star Child amendment of this first sentence.
And no, Star Child's was not, that's what the whole sustaining of the ruling of the chair was, where I did not permit him to withdraw because of that substantial amendment that you had made. And now there's
Not
another
true.
very substantial amendment. So I don't think until we're done amending the substitute,
All right.
people
Okay.
can make an
All right.
informed decision.
Yep.
Madam Chair, the appeal from the ruling chair was about it being out of order because of the addition, not because of Star Child withdrawing his motion.
I thought it was.
Well,
Again,
no, I was going to appeal the ruling of the
Oh,
chair
that's where-
back on that, but I did
Gotcha.
not because there was further disapproval or whatever.
Okay,
I don't
you are
remember.
correct, Mr. Choko and Mr. Seebeck. I am still going to say at this point, it is not in order for Star Child to withdraw in favor of this. It belongs to the body, and the body does not yet know what Mr. Brayman's substitute is going to look like and cannot make a meaningful decision. Mr. Brown.
Yes, I wanted to oppose Star Child's amendment here. I think we should keep that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. In fact, I liked his original proposal, which was a right that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate. But I understand we have too many amendments, so I couldn't move that as a substitute.
And I'm also going to say we're coming up on a special order, which is at 8:50. We were to consider whether or not to include items that we did not get to this evening on the survey, unless there is some sort of motion to dispose of this special order. We have to go to that now, even though we are in the middle of other things. So unless there is some motion to dispose of that special order or some motions to extend time so that afterwards we can do more on this, we are going to that special order. Mr. Brungart.
Yeah, move to extend time by 15 minutes.
Okay, there's a motion to extend time by 15 minutes, and I'm assuming that's from our ordinary stop time. So it would be to 11:15 p.m. Eastern. Is there an objection to the motion?
Objection.
Objection.
Okay, Mr. Ricuro, when you are ready, we will take a vote on extending time.
Yep. Let me get a ballot up because a number of things going on here. Okay, extension, 15 minutes, right? Alrighty, Mark Raymond,
Aye.
Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunghart,
Nay.
Matt Choco,
No.
Sean Hickman,
Nay.
Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Nay.
Omar Crow will vote nay. Mike Seebeck,
No,
Star Child,
Aye.
Curry Taylor,
No.
John Thompson.
No.
Okay, Madam Chair, if I didn't miss anyone, I'm showing 4 in favor, 8 opposed, and 0 expressed abstentions.
Okay, so the motion to extend time failed. We are on the orders of the special order, which is to include the 2 items as originally the motion was as listed in the agenda, but we have amended it. And I would think that the spirit of the motion was then that we would include wherever we are at on these various motions in the survey at the very end, including Mr. Brayman's big chunk of text as a separate proposal. I believe we spoke on this earlier. I don't know if anyone else wishes to speak on this or whether we could go to a vote.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Ricuro.
so this is item C, request direction on whether or not to include the survey Brayman and Star Child proposal on self-ownership. Isn't that the thing that we were going to discuss or that we were discussing?
This is whether to include it on the survey, whether or not this committee has reached a decision on the proposals. And it would be at the end of the survey. And as it stands right now, it would be the Star Child primary proposal, the Brayman substitute, and then the Brayman, I'm just calling it the presumption of health text. If we're able to get past choosing between the substitute or Star Child's primary, then it will just be that Brayman additional language, which I would hope we could get to. Star Child.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of including them since we haven't fully dealt with them. Presumably, if we did finish dealing with them, if we extended time, then we wouldn't need to. They'd just be part of the survey with everything else. But I think there's been speculation that that libertarians don't support what I am proposing in my proposed amendment, but I think that it really is uncharted territory because I don't think most libertarians have probably considered the points that I've raised. So I think it would actually be very useful to get feedback in the survey on how people feel about those ideas.
Mr. Choka.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that if we pass this motion, these will be the last items in the survey. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Brayman.
Yes, to reiterate, I first brought up text related to this at least 2 months ago and have been trying to figure out how to get it into our agenda. It's been fairly complicated, but I do think that there are a lot of people in the party as a whole who would be interested in commenting or in expressing an opinion as to how important or not they feel it is to have something about this material in the platform. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. And just to make it clear, even if these items do not end up appearing in the survey, it doesn't mean we won't necessarily propose them or that they won't be in our report, because do have some meetings before the report comes out, but we will not have survey data. All right, I believe we are ready for a vote. When you are ready, Mr. Secretary, what we are voting on is that whatever is left pending when we adjourn, which is in a few minutes, will be included for survey participation at the very end of the survey that will be going out this weekend, headquarters staff willing.
Okay, can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. Mark Raymond,
Aye.
Ted Brown,
Aye.
Joe Brunghart,
Aye.
Matt Chilcote,
Abstain.
Sean Hickman,
That's an aye.
okay, thank you. Ken Matz,
Aye.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Omar Crow abstains, Mike Seebeck,
Abstain.
Darchild,
We didn't hear you, Star Child.
Oh, I said aye. Yes.
Curry Taylor,
Abstain.
John Thompson.
Abstain.
Okay, I don't think I missed anyone. I'm gonna go to this. Madam Chair, I have here 7 in favor, 0 opposed, and 5 express abstention.
Okay, so they will be included at the end of the survey. We have a few minutes left. We're going to go back to the Star Child amendment to strike out that other groups, governments, or individuals, something to that flavor, may not violate. We had some speaking to that already. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to that? I know there is objection. If we could move to a vote on that, please, Mr. Secretary. We are voting on that red language, striking from the Bremen substitute that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
That's the Star Child amendment.
It's Star Child's amendment to the Bremen substitute.
There we go. Yes. All right, Mark Raymond
Aye.
and Ted Brown,
Nay.
Joe Brunghart,
Abstain.
Matt Chilcote,
Nay.
Sean Hickman,
Nay.
Ken Matz,
No.
Josh McHose,
I got distracted. Oh, I'm sorry. So what specific thing are we voting on?
On whether or not to strike that red language from the Bremen substitute that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate.
Number 16, nay.
Okay, I lost my thing here. Oh, Omar Crow, right. Omar Crow will abstain. Mike Seebeck,
No.
Star Child,
We cannot hear you, Star Child. He appears frozen.
yeah. Yeah, he's
Please type his-
typing in the he's typing in the chat. I'll come back. Curry Taylor,
No.
John Thompson.
No.
Okay. I'm gonna give Star Child one more shot here because we're at 11. It's not gonna make a difference, Madam Chair. I'm gonna show the ballot right now. Without Star Child's vote, we are at 1 in favor, 8 opposed, and 2 express abstentions.
Okay, it would not make a difference. So I would assume that Star Child would vote yes, since it was his amendment. We can add that to the record later.
Yeah.
Either way, it would not make a difference. We are at time of adjournment. If they're absent any further motions to extend, to at least try to dispose of this particular item, we will be adjourning. Are there any such motions?
Can you repeat the question, Madam Chair? I just lost my audio temporarily and rejoined the meeting.
Your vote on your amendment, I'm assuming, is yes.
Which amendment?
that other individuals, groups, and governments may not violate?
Correct, yes.
Okay, it did still fail, but
Okay.
we wanted to get that for the record. We are at time of adjournment unless there is a motion to extend to dispose of the substitute and the primary. Absent that, we will be adjourned. So I'm giving 1 moment to see if anyone wishes to make any such motion. All right, seeing none, we are adjourned at 11:01 Eastern. I'm going to stop the recording, and as usual, everyone can hang out to chat if they wish for a little bit.